It's 11:30, so I'm just going to check, in light of the technical problem that we had last week, if people are entering the room. Yes, people are start entering the room, so let's wait really another 1 minute before I start talking. Okay, let's start because it's a 30 minutes webinar. Hello, everybody. My name is Rosanna Borcheri. I'm the co-chair of the Smart Working Workstream at the Diversity Project. Welcome. This is the first of our series of new ways of working webinar. The aim is really to give you all sort of tangible evidence of the decision and the bold decision that certain companies across our industry and outside our industry have done in terms of the return to work post-COVID and the flexible working policy or hybrid working policy that they are putting in place. Please welcome Christy Barr, Head of Institutional UK Distribution at Standard Life Aberdeen. She's gonna give us a really 15-20 minutes maximum presentation on the way her company has taken on board hybrid working. You have the Q&A button on your Zoom, so if you have any question during her presentation, you can write on the Q&A function, or please raise your hand, and Caroline, who is working on the background, will unmute you at a certain moment in time after Christy's presentation to be able to interact with Christy, ask question. Well, as it is a 30 minutes webinar, I don't want to take any more time. Christy, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Rosanna, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the second time for a few of you. As we joked about last week, one of the reliances of being able to have a hybrid working structure is relying on technology, of course, and it doesn't always work. And this time it wasn't my fault, which it normally is, but yeah, I can't take responsibility for last week. So thanks for dialing in again. So before I go on to talk about our new ways of working, I thought it might be helpful to just talk about where we are now and what we're doing as a company. Like many of us in this industry, we're taking a very conservative approach to returning to the office. We remain with only key workers having access to the office, and we're also asking that those key workers have continual lateral flow testing to allow them into the office and attest to the fact that they've had negative tests. From next month, assuming the restrictions ease, then that list of workers will expand, and we will start implementing a very phased approach to our new ways of working, with a view to having that fully implemented by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. We are allowing client meetings in our offices on request of clients, and we've set up a few offices with all the required social distancing and health and safety measures to allow that to happen. So moving on to the new ways of working, a little bit of background to the evolution of our approach and the drivers of that. So throughout COVID, obviously our focus has been very much on resilience and continuity. But as we look forward, we've shifted towards trying to create a culture that's really centered on empowerment, inclusion, diversity, and importantly, wellness. So when we looked at that, we started by banishing our existing assumptions about what the office is used for and what types of work that need to be done. And so instead, what we did was we analysed those types of work, and we used that to inform us and look at where and how that work needs to happen. Next, we looked at how we can create flexibility, and flexibility goes beyond infrastructure, although we will need to do quite a bit of work on our tech and our infrastructure to make it happen. But we have to make that work hard for us, and we have to do that by shifting both our mindset and our capabilities. We then looked at how we can empower people and ensure transparency. So if we're not all together all of the time, we have to be very clear about where we are and where we want to go as an organisation, and set really clear guide rails around how we do it and how we can empower our people to deliver. So then we looked at our colleague personas, and we thought about the changing needs of people's roles and how that could shape our work. We have 7 broad categories of personas, and each of those categories have both similar and different needs and different factors that influence those needs over time, which will vary over time. And all of this leads us to a variable use of office space, where ultimately what we want to do is equip people to be able to operate equally, no matter where they're working from or which approach that they choose to take. So moving on to that new approach, it starts with the assumption that everyone will have the flexibility to take a blended approach to working from home or from the office. We do believe, however, that there are certain elements that are required, that do require people to be in the office together, and what we could call them the 4 Cs, and they're quite sort of intuitive, I guess, and that's collaboration, connectivity, coaching, and continuity. And I'll go through them. They're quite self-explanatory, but I will go through them in a little bit more detail. And I think that so far within the organisation, we've had no one actually who doesn't agree that these things require some face-to-face input, and for people to be physically in the same space for these things to happen, or to maximise the effect of all of these sort of 4 Cs. So I'll expand on them a little more. So collaboration includes things like strategic planning, problem solving, ideation, projects, delivery of time critical outcomes, and even team meetings, strategy days, and those sorts of things for a team to get together. Connectivity relates to both internal and external connections, so client meetings, investor meetings, due diligence, stakeholder engagement, board meetings, those sorts of things. Coaching may sound obvious, and I think this is a hugely important area, and one that probably has the potential to fall down if we don't pay attention to it and if we don't have people in similar spaces. These things, or sufficient face-to-face contact, I think, rather than in similar spaces. So these include things like onboarding new joiners. And I don't know if any of you have had to onboard new joiners through the pandemic. There's probably a lot of nods there. I've done both junior and senior people that I've onboarded, and it's really difficult. And it's difficult for them as a new joiner. How do they find their place in the organisation, their way around an organisation, that team camaraderie that you get, the osmosis of learning across the desk? It's very difficult, and it's taken, it takes a lot more time, Zoom time, with that person to make them feel welcome, and that's not as effective as it can be face to face. So other things within the coaching section are typical things: performance management, career development, engagement, mentoring, developing early careers, and even the ad hoc, the observation and oversight that we do on a day-to-day basis when we're all together in the office. And then lastly, we have continuity. And this is probably something I think we could overlook, but it's the call and contact centres, it's the reception and front of house, building operations, mail rooms, paper-based tasks for legal, client documentation and contracts, and those sorts of things. So that's the 4 Cs, and that's a summary of the reasons why we think people do need to come to the office and to be face-to-face and in the same spaces as together as where we can. The tasks that we're not expecting people to come to the office is to complete email, BAU kind of task, screen-based work, that sort of thing. That can, people have proven we can quite happily do that from home. And so this is where we can be flexible, and it depends on individual circumstances. We're not, because of the 4 Cs that I explained, we're not advocating for anyone to work from home 100% of the time. We really do believe that it's got to be a blended approach to maximise all of to get the best out of people for all of the work that they have to do. But we're not being prescriptive about that time split, and it really is up to individuals with their managers and with their teams to work out what is the most effective way for everyone to work to achieve their goals. So now that's the sort of quick and dirty of why we're moving to a hybrid approach. And now if I may move on to the logistics of how we're actually going to do that. And Caroline's going to bring up a graphic for us to have a look at. as we think about our office space moving forward. So what's going to appear on screen is a picture of our one of the floors in our office in Bowbells House in London. And what you can see here, I mean, this is, if anyone's ever been in our office, it's completely different to the very sort of old-fashioned dark place that we have currently. But this is what one of our floors has been transitioned into, and it's a very much a mix of flexible working space, collaborative areas, wellness, and sort of more flexible working space. So you can see down the right-hand side, there's the desks. Some of those will have PCs. A lot of them will be hot desks, where you can just come in and bring your laptop and so forth. There's a combination of sofa areas. You can see there in the middle, there's a Knights of the Round Table style table, some coffee areas. The dark blue sort of 2 square corners, that's like a little amphitheatre style where there's tiered seating, so someone could be presenting in the middle of that, for example, and people can contribute in and out of a conversation, and everyone can look in and see what's happening. The space is light, it's bright, it's full of greenery. I mean, you can't, on this spec you can't see, but there's greenery everywhere, lots of natural materials, so it really does feel very it's very different to a typical office space. There's some lockers there, which is really important because it does mean we can leave things in there, the important things like our shoes and our reusable coffee cups and water bottles. And in our Edinburgh office, where we're currently undertaking a similar refurbishment, we're also trialling having some permanent dedicated wellness centres as well. And so this is the desk spaces have reduced by probably 50%. It's not exactly that, but it's around about 50%. And so in that space, how do we determine who will get a space and who will get a desk? So we've established neighbourhoods, as we're calling them, which are dedicated areas for specific functions. So we have a neighbourhood for distribution, for example. So when we come in, we know that everyone in distribution will be sitting within that same neighbourhood. We're currently trialling the idea of using an app to book a space for your desk for the day. We'll see what reaction that gets as we have more people using that. And we're still welcoming feedback on ideas on things like whether we actually have dedicated team desks and whether anyone needs a permanent desk if anyone's going to be in the office full time, and whether they require a permanent desk. So to sum up, we're taking a blended approach to office and home-based working, with very much a focus on a culture of inclusion, diversity and well-being. And we're focusing on creating spaces and policies that equip people to be able to operate equally no matter which approach that they take. And so that's it really in a nutshell. I think I whizzed through that in record time, but it's really important to say that this is all very much a work in progress. It will evolve as we trial some of these new ways and as we get feedback from people and as we settle into the new ways of working. So the important thing is that we're trying to really maximize flexibility without losing what helps people perform to their best and to develop and learn. So that's it. I'll hand back to you, Rosanna, and we'll take some questions. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, actually, brilliant input, Christian. I have a few questions immediately. The first one is, did you come up with this idea because of the feedback that you collected from a survey that you've been running in during the COVID, or it was something that was already bubbling in the mind of the management, and the COVID just gave the opportunity to push it and to accelerate?
Yeah, so I think it's been primarily driven by COVID. I mean, we've been wanting to upgrade our office space for a long time, so this is definitely the catalyst to help us do that. Certainly our new CEO, Stephen Bird, has very much been a driver of this. He's really behind this hybrid working approach and creating, the culture that I've talked about that he wants to create and that the senior management want to create. But it definitely has been it's been collaborative. We have had surveys all throughout COVID. We've been asking people a lot about what's their preference for working from home versus working from the office, and this is how we've evolved to the current situation or the current trials that we're looking at implementing. And we've got a committee and HR which have very much driven we start with the culture and then implement it from there.
Excellent. And just out of curiosity, how the management will assess the success of this new culture approach and this idea in terms of office space and embracing the new ways of working?
So I think we will continue to engage with staff, and we'll continue to do surveys, have feedback mechanisms, all of those sorts of things. This has to work for the people. And if it doesn't, then, we're not going to have the same levels of productivity that we enjoy. We will obviously continue to look at metrics for productivity and make sure that that's staying as high as we would expect. But primarily it's about the feedback from the people. If it works for us, then it works for the company. And so that's how we'll measure success. And what does success look like? I think if more people in the survey say that they're happy with the arrangement and that it works for them and that productivity is high, fantastic. We've achieved what we want to achieve.
Great. I don't know if there are any raised hand or if someone wants to ask any question. I cannot see any question on the WhatsApp. Sorry, I'm moving my hand, but I have another one. One of the things, and as a work stream and the diversity project, we are trying to push really the adoption of flexible policy or hybrid policy, however a company want to call them. And sometimes we have this feedback as the C-suite, the CEO or the CFO, the COO are super embracing, and they know that it is important for the culture of the company. But then there is the problem of the line manager, and we always mention this, that for change to endure in a company, there has to be a leading by example. And so, is there any trick that you can share with us of how the company is sort of making sure that the line manager are really buying into it? I mean, I suppose the fact that you change the space, it's already, that's it. You have to adopt it. But there something else?
Yeah, I think because we're very specific about the reasons we expect people to come into the office, and we've got buy-in into that. I would argue, I would challenge anyone to say why they don't need one of those 4 C's, at least one, if not more, of why they can do that better remotely. And so far we've got excellent engagement from all the staff in buying into those reasons as well. So in a way, half of that challenge, I think, has been overcome. And I equally would challenge anyone to say, I certainly haven't met anyone who wants to go back to the office 5 days a week. So I think everyone falls within that or buys into that hybrid approach. What will have to, naturally it is going to fall to leaders and managers to implement it. And I think for example, I have a team and it's up to me. I need to make sure that I organise those coaching sessions, the collaboration sessions, facilitate everyone to be coming into the office to do those, and make sure that whatever mechanism we put in place, that I have the ability to implement that mechanism, and so to make those things happen. I think we will continue. This will evolve. People, I think, even across society, as we all evolve to this new approach to working, will everyone stay in the city? Will we have regional hubs? Who knows, right? We don't know. So all of this will evolve over time. But I think the fact that we have engaged staff along the journey, we've asked for feedback along the way, we've used that feedback to deliver something that it seems that people want. I think we've got a lot of buy-in, and that will help us implement it. But absolutely, and I said, as a line manager, I believe in it. I love the idea of flexible working and hybrid working and all of those sorts of things. One of my challenges, and I think others will relate to this, is, if I have each of my team coming into the office on different days, do I then have to be there 5 days a week to see them all? Well, ideally, I'd like to be able to coordinate for everyone to come on certain days. So these are the challenges of implementation, and these are the things that will evolve and change, I think, as we start putting this into practice with more people coming back in.
Excellent. There are a lot of questions. So Caroline, can you unmute one by one? Or shall I say who is going to ask the first one? Okay, I'll do it.
Gareth.
Gareth, I think you can start.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. Just a couple, actually. The first one, I guess, is whether you have any tips on best practice for evolving towards a flexible working model. You know, is there anything in your experience so far that has gone well or not so well? I know that you talked a lot about engaging with staff across the business on what they wanted, but is there anything that perhaps where you've had a situation where there's been a sort of fairly even split between wanting to go in one direction or another, and how you've looked to try and resolve that issue?
Nothing springs to mind that wasn't unresolvable. And actually what's interesting is I think this has very much evolved over time as well. I think if, 12 months ago when we surveyed people about working from home, everyone loved it. No more commuting and no more, rushing in and out of the city and doing all of those things. But over time that's evolved, and now actually people realize and appreciate the value of being in having face-to-face contact with colleagues and being on the desk at the same time. So I think we need to be patient. We need to be flexible. I think that's the big thing, and be adaptable. I think we have to assume that whatever we put in place will evolve and will change based on as we get used to these new ways of working. I think the other thing that worked really well was that when we sort of, what I talked about in the beginning about the background of how we approached it, we didn't, whilst we were thinking about people's preferences for where they wanted to be, we looked at actually, well, what work needs to be done in the office and what doesn't. And I think that was a great starting point for us, because we came up with the 4 C's, which is, as I said, it's intuitive, and it's probably not surprising that that's where it's at. And I think a lot of other companies will have a similar approach. But looking at why we want people to be in the office is probably the biggest driver of the result, and that's what I would suggest is the right starting point, perhaps.
Great.
And you said you had
very much.
Sarah.
I did, yeah. Just a second question is really just looking at your sort of executive leadership team. What are they doing specifically to try and promote and embed this new way of working across the firm? Are they, for example, sort of embracing a sort of flexible working model as well? Are they talking about sort of training maybe some of their sort of direct reports in sort of flexible working, or is there anything else that they're doing that maybe we could take away as being helpful for us as other firms?
I think our team has been excellent with communication. We've had almost sort of weekly emails about how the approach is evolving, what we're doing. And of course, this hasn't happened overnight. So, it's been a journey that we've been on, and we've taken people, or they've taken us on that journey with them. And so by the time we're now at the point where, and bear in mind, very, very few people have seen this office in practice, the change that we had the little graphic of. There's only still a dozen people or so. There's not very many people in each of our offices. So very, very few people have seen and actually seen this come to life. So it's all still a little bit theoretical for most people, because we're all still working from home for now. And as we evolve and take our phased approach to getting people back to the office over the next 6 months or so, more and more people will have the opportunity to implement this. And what we can't forget, I think, Gareth, is that we need to continue that communication and continue taking people on the journey. We can't assume that once they're in the office that's the end of the journey. We've got to continue, feedback and communication.
So essentially you have like a feedback loop, essentially. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay.
That's very helpful.
Thanks, Gary, for the question. There are a few anonymous questions, Christy, so I'll ask it. There is one about actually how have your clients reacted to the plans, because I assume you have communicated to clients this new approach to work. So just curiosity, or if you don't, if you plan to.
Yeah, we haven't formally, we haven't sort of reached out to everyone and said, this is the approach we're taking. A lot of our clients are also taking the flexible approach. And I think probably everyone on the call will have that same experience with their clients. So I don't think, what we're doing is not revolutionary. It's just, we're probably just a little bit more advanced than maybe some others. And I think that as long as we continue to meet our clients' needs, and that we have the flexibility and the optionality to meet with them wherever that may be, whether that's in our office or at a place of their choosing, then, you know, they'll be happy with that. And our productivity has been very, very high over the last, I don't really like the word productivity, but you know what I mean, has been very, very high over the last, over the whole sort of lockdown and COVID period. So our clients certainly haven't suffered from us not being in the office. So I think in that way they will be very accepting of a split or hybrid approach. Blended, we call it.
Excellent. And there are two questions that maybe I'll put together. Is about really on the point of coaching, and probably you're in the middle of it. I mean, is your impression? I mean, your starting point that probably coaching, because of this blended approach, is gonna take a little bit longer. Above all, thinking about a new joiner, because maybe they feel obliged to, as they are new to the company, to come every day, so they are sure to meet the people that are popping in and out during the week.
Yeah, I think that again comes down to, you know, we were talking about the line managers helping to implement things, and I think that's really important, because it's up to us to facilitate enough of that coaching opportunities, collaborative opportunities, team meetings, you know, making sure that we can all be in the same space together sufficiently, especially for early career people and new joiners. But equally, like, I've just taken on a new team 2 months ago, and I found it much more difficult. You know, I said to someone, I said, it's really hard for them to get to know my sparkling personality over a Zoom call, you know, no matter how many times you do it, when you don't have that desk chat, and you don't have that opportunity for people to just walk over and ask you a question or do those sorts of things. So that's sort of, I think that will take more time. I think it will take a lot more of a considered approach and a very defined approach to make it happen. It won't happen unless we make it happen. So we have to facilitate things like coaching. Yeah.
Excellent. But do you feel that, I mean, it's not a requirement for the new joiner. You're not telling them, well, by the way, because you are a new joiner, you need to come 5 days per week. It's you know, they have to embrace the blended. Yeah. And there is also another question on team bonding and how you think you will able to maintain it. Is there the sort of hint to organize, you know, more team events, above all, to make sure, let's think about a new joiner, so they really feel comfortable and feel part of the team, as maybe, you know, they will be in contact with the other team member only, I don't know, 30 days over 3 months, and just
yeah. I think that's really important. I think it's important even when we were in the office all together, it was important to have those off the desk events, right? Where it was more relaxed, it was a little bit more personal, it was a little bit more informal. And I think we definitely need to continue doing that. One thing we were talking about just recently was, you know, for example, if we were having a team meeting and everyone was coming into the office for that team meeting, I would like, for example, to be able to book that meeting room for the entire day, so that we can all sit in that one room together, all on laptops or whatever, so that actually you're kind of in that, you've just got that chatter going across the desk, rather than perhaps we've got a bank of desks in our neighbourhood, but we may not all be sitting next to each other on those bank of desks. So could we create that space? And then if you do that once a month or however often you know want to bring the team together, then is that sufficient? These are, I think, they're a little bit of the unknowns at the moment, but it's a known unknown, right? It's not going to take us by surprise. It's something we have to be really, really conscious of. And as managers and as team members, we have to continue the communication with our teams to make sure that we're asking the questions, you know, how they're feeling about everything, how they're feeling about being part of a team. New joiners, you know, one of the new joiners, really senior guy that I brought on last year, and he knows, he's been around forever, so he knows how to find his way around an organisation. He knows how to do all of those things, and he was tearing his hair out because he hadn't met anyone. and so now that we're able to be a little bit more flexible and have some drinks in the city or whatever it might be, even if it's in smaller groups, we can address some of those things. But it's going to take a considered effort on the part of managers and team members to make all of these things happen.
I want to squeeze one last question, because actually it's something that has come up a lot, and probably is something that also has come out of the survey that you have been done, is the mental health of certain people, because the lockdown have been really, really tough for certain people. And there is also this anxiety for certain people, which is completely understandable, that have maybe to travel along to come back to the office. And I understand the point that you were making, that, for example, for the moment you make the lateral flow test a sort of compulsory before coming to the office. But have you done something else also to make sure that people now feel comfortable to come back to the office in this new environment that you are creating?
So we we've been at Standard Life Aberdeen has been excellent in supporting its staff. It really has. It's been top notch. We've had loads of mental health support, well-being and wellness support, facilities, opportunities to help with all of that sort of thing along the way, and that will continue. And as I said, we're trialling in our Edinburgh office, we're trialling dedicated wellness centres. So we really want wellness to become part of our culture and part of just the accepted ways of working moving forward. What that looks like in practice, of course, we don't know, because we don't know what we haven't put this stuff into practice yet. I think we are very strictly following the government guidelines. So let's assume that things open up on the 21st of June, as we're expecting them to. It won't be, right, everyone's allowed back in the office now. It's a very, very phased approach. So if people are still uncomfortable, they don't have to come back in. We're expecting that we will be operating in a full blended approach by, let's say, the beginning of next year. So we've got still 6-7 months for people to get used to things. Let's hope vaccines are all in place by then and people are, feeling protected and feeling able to come back in. But if they're not, we've got mental health and wellness and well-being support for those people so that we can help them through that journey.
Right. Last question, but I think, probably I'll answer while talking, but I suppose, someone was asking about, very junior people that probably live, sharing a flat, and for them the lockdown has really not been fun, or maybe they don't have the right laptop or whatever, the right setting. But I suppose your blended approach means that everyone is free. So if this kind of people want to show up every day because they like to have a nicer space to work in, they can. Yeah, they can, exactly. Yeah. That's the approach. It's got to work. You can take the approach that works best for you. Excellent. Well, I think I ran out of. I've asked all the questions that were on the box, and we are in the 30 minutes. Christy, thank you very much. All the best of luck, and I've taken plenty of notes, and I will feedback all the trial, and probably I will chase you up with
follow up
how
in
things
12 months time or something. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for your time.
By the end of the year, to see how things are going. Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you to the next New Ways of Working webinar. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.